I want her job. That's the best way to describe our next guest. Not only that, but just the ability to be able to write about this and know what you're writing about. Melissa Ruggieri is national music writer for USA Today. Melissa, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate having me on. And, I don't always know what I'm writing about.
I don't know. They gave me some examples of some of your work, and I think you do just fine. Can I just...
thank you.
1995, when you weren't even around yet, writing about rock and roll. Cleveland, Ohio, the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I make a trek. I get in this old beat-up van with some other people, and I went to the concert, and that's one of those, I'll never go to another concert like that in my life. You see all these great artists that are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I bring that up, Melissa, just so as I'm jealous about your job, you can be jealous of me. Now, don't tell me you were at that concert, okay?
I was at that concert.
Were you?
I was the assistant music writer actually at the time at the Fort Lauderdale Sun Sentinel, and the main writer, brought me along with her to just give her a hand.
You took away the one thing I had over you.
I'm so sorry.
One little thing. Now, old Cleveland Municipal Stadium was a real crap hole. You'll agree to that. I mean, it was, and it had these great big three-tiered, metal beams that held up the tier. And so when we got there, HBO had decided to do the concert live. And so we had a metal beam, and there was only 18 people behind us with worse seats. We were that far away. And so you had these metal beams and then the HBO light towers. And so this is what we saw. We complained to Ticketmaster, and they took us down to the 27th row. So you might have had great seats, but I had really good seats.
No, you had better. You just press box, which, as you know, is not always the best seat in the house, but you do get a pretty good overview of everything. You definitely had better seats, so you win.
Okay, the competition ends. Now I'll get to work on I think you still won. I want to talk a little bit about the class of 2022 into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Describe to people this class, the diversity of this class, and the people that are in the class, if you would.
Sure. It is really one of the most diverse classes and one of the most female-centric classes that they've had in recent years. They've gotten a lot of flack over the years for not really having enough women in there. And last year when the Go-Go's got in, Kathy Valentine, their bassist, during her speech actually said, hey, let's get some more ladies up here. And it seems as if the voters actually listened this year, because you've got Dolly Parton, you've got Carly Simon, you've got Duran Duran. Of course, we can talk about the non-women too. You have Duran Duran, you have Eminem, Lionel Richie, Pat Benatar, and the Eurythmics. So Annie Lennox, part of the Eurythmics, Pat Benatar, Carly, Dolly, 4 women. That's actually a pretty good showing, I would say. And, I think that they've got a lot of younger voters than they used to have. And of course, we could talk for hours and debate for hours about who should be in and who isn't in, and how did Duran Duran get in over Jethro Tull, as my cousin angrily texted me yesterday afternoon. He's still bitter about that. And hey, look, as somebody who grew up in the 80s, I'm thrilled about Duran Duran. I think they don't get enough credit. I think they're a great band, trailblazers for New Wave, what they did. But also they won the fan vote. And over the years, it's been about 10 years now that the Rock Hall has also been allowing this fan vote. The only act to not get in after winning the fan vote was Dave Matthews Band a couple of years ago. Other than that, pretty much if you've won the fan vote, and they won by a lot, they won by over 1 million votes, you're pretty much guaranteed that you're going to get in. Because if 1 million people are voting for you, then how could you really turn the other way? But I like the fact that there are, I like the fact that Eminem is it. I mean, he's the 10th hip hop artist to be inducted. I know a lot of people disagree with the fact that hip hop is in. And then, of course, we've got Dolly, who I think, in a weird way, in her humbleness of initially rejecting the nomination, somehow this has kind of turned into being all about her. And last week when she went on NPR and said, oh, well, if they do decide to give me the induction, I would accept it gracefully and humbly. Well, that also makes you think maybe she knew that she was getting in, and that was why she said that. But, every story that you've seen in the last 24 hours, my own included, there's a lot written about Dolly because she initially said, nah, I'm not really worthy. I'm not rock and roll. But then again, you go back to this debate of what's rock and roll, and country, rhythm and blues, jazz. I mean, all these genres work together to become rock and roll decades ago. So is it really wrong that a Dolly Parton is in? No, I don't think it's really wrong. She's a phenomenal songwriter too, and I guess people would say put her in the Songwriters Hall of Fame, which she is. But I don't have a problem with the genre distinctions that a lot of people do, because I think I probably see music in a broader sense than some people might. But I also understand if you're going to categorize something as rock and roll, having Carly Simon, Lionel, Dolly, people might go, yeah, no, not so much.
Well, and I get some of that too. But then I have the same failings myself when it comes to hip hop, when it comes to genres that I don't listen to. And then I talk to my kids about, well, come on, they don't belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Then I get both barrels opened up on me. They get mad and they point out that I'm just old and I don't understand.
How old are your kids?
My kids are 38 and 37.
Okay, so they're not kids. I mean, so they've grown up. They probably grew up listening to like an Eminem. That's the generation where he became really popular. Yeah. Yeah,
and they grew up listening to the Rolling Stones too. I'm going to tell you that. I raised them right in so many ways. But I mean, when you look at this list, you talk about genres. Harry Belafonte. When you hear Harry Belafonte, nobody's going to go out and say that's rock and roll, but yet there is something there. There is something there that plays into the whole attitude of rock and roll.
Sure, and Harry Belafonte so the people we've been just talking about, Dolly Duran, Eurythmics, Pat, they're all the performer category, and Harry Belafonte is actually one of the early influencer awards. So they have a few other categories that they have other people in, like Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and Judas Priest actually are being inducted for musical excellence. And funny enough, Judas Priest was on the original nomination list this year as performers. They apparently didn't get in as performers, so the Rock Hall said, all right, we'll bring you in the side door and give you this musical excellence award instead, because I think hard rock has been overlooked a lot. I mean, you look at a band like Iron Maiden, you look at Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath is in, but Ozzy as a solo performer, I mean, he was groundbreaking what he did in the late 70s, early 80s, just his solo work alone. So I understand why they want to maybe give some recognition to a harder edged artist. But again, someone like Harry Belafonte, no, I mean, you're not going to look at him as rock and roll, but you could certainly look at him as an early influencer. And then the three music veterans who get the Ahmet Ertegun Award, Alan Grubman, Jimmy Iovine, and Sylvia Robinson, these are all people who have been in the industry for decades, and certainly no argument that they don't deserve some kind of recognition. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, my goodness. You look what they've done over the years. Janet Jackson's a small piece of their legacy. To be totally honest, I thought they were already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because they should be.
That was my next question of you, which is, when you look through this list, there are some question marks that said, really? I mean, how did we get to the point where that individual's in and this one isn't yet? I mean, we can go through the list and Carly Simon being a perfect example of that. It's like Carly Simon isn't in yet, type of a thing. If these different genres are going to be in, which both you and I apparently agree that they should be honored. So, what decides this to the point where, is there just, to some degree, an arrogance, elitism? I mean, should it be more encompassing? I'm curious what your belief is on that.
I do, because again, I think rock and roll isn't just four chords and a drum beat. I mean, it's a lot more than that. It's a lot more nuanced than that. And one of my colleagues actually did a side story to my piece yesterday about the inductees, about, okay, Dolly's in, here are 5 other country greats who should be in as well. And he mentioned Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks brought Kiss and Billy Joel to a stage in a country audience. I mean, when you went to a Garth Brooks show, and still do, that's a rock show. That's not a country show. I mean, Garth Brooks should absolutely be recognized. Chris Christopherson wrote Me and Bobby McGee. Janis Joplin, why wouldn't he be honored for that? Glenn Campbell, they're great guitar work there. So yeah, I mean, there are so many artists in other genres that I do think deserve the recognition. And you know what? It's all rock and roll at the end. Yeah,
it's still rock and roll to me. The one thing that I continue to tell people who have a problem with this, and it'll happen the minute I get home, we'll have a talk about Dolly, is, the same people were okay with Johnny Cash getting in.
Right.
And they not only getting in, but they were like, well, of course, of course. And so, he
was considered a pioneer, though. I think some of those earlier country artists, they looked at like, well, yeah, as you say, pioneers. But now, sure, again, Garth Brooks, I'd say he's a pioneer for what he's done as well.
You know what you owe it to her to do is pick up edition one and look at USA Today, because we're talking about fabulous work, and that's where you find it. Melissa, thank you for giving us your time.